Right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the meeting during our ballot period. We've got a little panel here tonight. We've got Lillian Mesa here, the Scottish Secretary, Marie Quigley, and Brenda Aitchison and myself. We are part of the steering group who's negotiating with COSLA. So thanks for coming along tonight. And our topic tonight will be about local government funding and how the inflation adds into the pay claim we're doing. Lillian, do you want to start off and tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, thanks very much, Susanna. Thank you to colleagues for the sterling work that you're doing. Not only are we balloting our members right now, but we're also continuing negotiations with COSLA, with Scottish Government to get an improved offer. And I think that's important to say this evening. Equally important to say is that to allow our steering group, you guys on the call, we need everyone to return their ballot. As many ballots as possible gives your negotiators strength, and it gives them the ability to go in to COSLA, to the Scottish Government, to enforce and insist that the Scottish Government and COSLA listen, because the strength of our members is there in huge numbers when you return your ballot paper. Your local government committee are recommending that you take action to secure an improvement to the offer that's been made, and we're encouraging you to return your ballot to vote for strike action. If you are not going to vote for strike action, we're still encouraging you to return your ballot to get over the anti-trade union thresholds that have been established over a number of years. We need everyone to participate, and everyone's voice matters in this ballot. Really important that you do that. Some of the statistics around the finance for local government and services would absolutely shock you. We know, you know, as local government workers, the strain and the stress that you're under, that the services are under right now. Since 2011, we've seen massive reductions to the budget for local government services, 26% reduction in culture and leisure, huge reductions in that space, which impacts on our community, it impacts on our well-being, and impacts right across our most vulnerable within society. We've seen a 13% reduction in roads, and we know the state of our roads right now in terms of potholes and the state of the infrastructure. And that reduction has meant that there has been no investment. In fact, there's been a decline in our roads infrastructure. We've seen a 25% reduction in planning. Again, hugely important for the local community and local services that we have planners in place to deliver on that agenda. And we've seen a 30% reduction in tourism spending. And again, a huge reduction that has impacted on our ability to make sure that we have an infrastructure that welcomes people to Scotland, that looks at Scotland in terms of ensuring that the tourists enjoy our marvellous country. So that's just some of the reductions, massive reductions in trading standards and environmental health, which impact across, again, all of our communities, and an 11% reduction in waste services, with a massive 39% reduction in street cleansing services. Again, our communities, our environment are suffering because of the reduction in services. So all of that, those reductions have meant a massive cut to services. And whilst we, and as local government workers like yourself, are keen to make sure those services are enhanced and improved, as Unison, we need to make sure that the workers in those services get recognition for what they do. And all of those cuts mean that the workers are working harder, they're working longer, they're not getting that recognition, and they're certainly not getting the recognition in their pay. Decent local authority services need investment, and they can't be delivered on the cheap. So our message to COSLA and to the Scottish Government is that you've got to spend in local government services, you've got to spend and invest in public services in order to invest in the future of Scotland. It's critical that local government services get the recognition that they need, get the spending authority that they need. And frankly, starving one service to feed another, starving the local government services to feed the NHS is not working. We're an integrated, jointly integrated services, social health and social care, and you can't feed one and starve the other. The impact of not investing in social care means that we have significant long waits in our hospitals, in our accident emergency departments. We have significant long waits for planned operations for hip and knee replacements. And that means that people are suffering in our communities. So whilst the Scottish Government might think it's okay to pull back on the investment in local government services, those have an impact across all of our public services. Our public services are the answer to growth, to investment, and to invest in local authorities and the workers who deliver them is not a drain on our society. It's an investment in growth that stimulates the growth within local services, and all prosper from that. I'll end, Suzanne, if I can, just again to remind colleagues about the ballot. It is absolutely critical that you return your ballot paper, and we need everyone on this call to speak to your colleagues back in your workplaces to make sure they know that their voice matters, and their voice absolutely matters in this ballot process. Unison needs to hear from you. The Scottish Government and COSLA need to hear your voice, and your negotiators on this call, your steering group and your negotiating team need the power that you will give them through returning that ballot to negotiate a better pay settlement for local government workers in Scotland. You deserve it, you deserve better, and with a focus on ensuring that we negotiate a better deal for local government workers, to do that, we need the power of the ballot box, and we need your ballot paper returned.
And you're on mute. Oh dear, I was on mute. Apologies. Just to do it, I have to do it once an evening anyway. So that's that out of the way. Thanks a lot, Lillian. It is absolutely right. I agree that we have to get the spending in local government increased, because otherwise the NHS will be on its knees completely when it comes to social care, and the Scottish Government just needs to understand that they can't fund one and not the other. Both are vital in the provision of public services. What I was going to say was, for those of you who are new to this, we actually have a question and answer point up there, and we have Mo in the background to see what is coming. I've seen one already. If we do a few questions now, from Kathy, who is asking, well, 3% is still a pay rise, isn't it? I don't know, Brenda, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think the problem is 3% isn't keeping pace with inflation, and that so effectively it's a pay cut if you accept that. COSLA came back to us in February with 3%, and we had a Scottish Local Government Committee, and we discussed it fully, and we were taking soundings the following day from our branch secretaries. We've got 32 branches in Scotland. Each of those branches has a branch secretary, and we wanted to take the soundings from them to see what they thought of that offer. And the resounding voices were heard that we should reject the offer. And that same day was the day that inflation exceeded 3%. So effectively, it's a pay cut. And if you look at the figures in the past couple of days, inflation is on the rise again. So it's easy sometimes when people say, oh, you've been offered 3%, it's a bit more. But you have to actually think, what's that going to do to the value of your shop when you're paying your bills, when you're doing your food shop, your gas, your electricity, your council tax, your mortgage, your rent? because all of these things are going up far higher than 3%. So you're not even standing still. And I think when you look at the kind of pay increases we've had over the years, we're way behind what we should be, way behind what we should be. And Lillian's made the right point. It is a funding issue. And COSLA will blame Scottish Government, and the Scottish Government will say it's COSLA. But at the end of the day, it comes down to money. And the money is a political choice. And I think that's what our kind of plea is to politicians. It's very short-sighted that not to invest in the workforce, which in turn also means that you're getting better services, the staff aren't burned out. And I think you have to think about the thing that I always think about is the services that we provide in many cases are preventative services. They keep our children safe in early years. They provide social housing. They clean our streets. And I think the point that Lillian made about the health and social care partnerships, one of the best things is if you can keep people in their own homes. In order to keep people in your own homes, you need to invest in social care. In order to invest in social care, you need to attract people into that service. You need to be paying them decent wages. They need to have a proper career path. They need to be valued. And the problem is there's a staffing crisis in social care because they can earn the same money working in Aldi or Morrison's without all the stresses. But these are really important services because people thrive if they've got that support mechanism. Because if they don't have that, what happens is that strain goes on to the NHS, and it's more expensive to have someone at the NHS in a hospital than it is to keep them in their own homes. And a lot of the services that we provide, people may not need them now. You may not need a social worker now, but in 10 years' time, you might need a social worker. So if that service isn't properly funded and properly resourced, you're going to have problems. So it's a political choice, and it's something that we think that is long overdue. An overhaul of local government funding, and also a decent inflation-proofed pay rise for local government workers. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. We've got Bob here. He's asking, is Unison lobbying the Scottish Government around funding? Marie, do you want to take that?
Yep, thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, that is something that obviously we've been pushing COSLA to do this year and in past pay rounds as well, because the Scottish Government essentially holds the purse strings, and we also think COSLA have got a role in this as well, in terms of, you know, taking the argument to the Scottish Government that local authorities are chronically underfunded, and we have been for a long time, and we're starting to see the effects in that in terms of recruitment issues. Like Brenda mentioned, it's difficult to recruit in a lot of areas because local government wages just aren't competitive anymore, and that's from in every grade, you know. So we very much believe that the Scottish Government needs to put its hand in its pockets. We've been saying that for the last few years, and it is definitely one of our aims to hopefully jointly go to the Scottish Government with COSLA and say, this, you know, you really need to take this situation seriously. Our members demand a proper pay settlement, and 3% just isn't going to cut it. And if COSLA can't afford to fund that, they must go to the Scottish Government. So yeah, to answer that question, yeah, that is part of the strategy, is to take that argument and that fight to the government.
Thanks, Marie. Just looking here. Oh, there's Vela. Comes with the opposite question. What can members do to force COSLA and Scottish Government to put up the offer? So every member we've got in local government, we really need them to return the ballot paper they got in their purple envelopes. That is so important. There it is. Yeah. We're going to frame them or something. We've seen lovely photos of people posting them from the borders to Fair Isle, and I think I've seen one in Argyll and in Edinburgh as well. So fantastic. So if every member can return those ballot papers, yes, we recommend yes to vote for action, but it is important that everybody, no matter what your opinion is, returns that ballot papers. And if you can ask your friends, colleagues, family, anybody who works in local government, if you find them on the street, just ask them and make sure they all put back their ballot papers. That is the most important thing that gives us then the leverage to work on a better pay offer. I'm just looking, there is another one. Stephen, I work in a school. I'm reluctant to vote because I don't want to go on strike again. Brenda, you want to say something about that?
Obviously, as a local government committee, we're asking you to return your ballot paper and say yes to both questions. But as Lillian said earlier on, if that's not what you want to do, it's still crucially important that you return your ballot paper because every vote counts. We're working to a threshold, so we need to adhere to that. And it's also part of democracy. You know, you pay your union dues. This is the first all members ballot we've had in quite some time. So it's your chance to have your say. So think about what's been said tonight. Talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues at work. And if you don't want to vote for strike action, then that's fine. You're a member, you've got that voice. But the crucial thing is that you return your ballot paper because the best form of industrial action is industrial action that we don't have to take. You know, we don't take this decision. This costs money, costs time, costs resources. You know, ideally we wouldn't have been placed in this position. We would have been given an offer that we would have been able to recommend to the members and go into ballot, but we're not in that situation. So we have to take a steer from the members. And I think we didn't take that decision lightly to go to an all members ballot. We haven't done it for quite some time. We've tried what's known as a disaggregate ballot, which was obviously the schools were heavily involved in that. And there's a couple of reasons why the schools are involved, but the main reason for that is it causes disruption and it gets headlines. But the main thing is it draws the Scottish Government to the table because that's a key priority for the Scottish Government. And that's not new. That's been a key priority for Scottish Government for a number of years. So that's why we've chosen early years in the past, but this is different. This is going to every local government unison worker. So all I can say to you is, if that's not what you want to vote for, that's absolutely fine. Just return your ballot paper. Thank you, Suzanne.
Suzanne, can I just jump in there a wee second as well, just to sort of, just to add to what Brenda was saying. We have balloted specific groups of members in the last few years, specifically around about schools, early years and waste members as well. But and that's been great and it has worked to a certain extent for us. But what we were hearing from our members on the ground as well is everybody wants to get involved now, you know. So a lot of members I was out talking to were saying, when's it our turn? And you know, and they want to contribute, you know, to the fight, as it were. So that's another reason why we've got an all members ballot running this time, because just to show that sort of strength. Hopefully, you know, we'll get good results in the ballot across the 32 councils. That will be a good proof that there's local government workers in all jobs, in all walks of life, are not going to take it anymore. And certainly that's what we're hearing from our members locally. Everybody's up for this fight now.
Thanks, Marie. And I've got one more here from Tom. Why haven't we been offered the same as the NHS? Lillian, with your NHS background, do you want to take that?
No, absolutely. I think that's a really, really important question that's come in. So we have met the Scottish Government, we've met COSLA, as the colleagues on this call have done, and we've said that you cannot have your favourites. Public sector workers need to be treated equally. We cannot run the NHS without local authority input. We cannot look at delayed discharges without social care being involved, without the social workers being involved, and without the wider local authority workforce being involved in that. So we are absolutely clear that we don't put one worker against another. This is not about us arguing that the NHS workforce don't deserve the pay offer that they got. Our NHS colleagues have voted, they have accepted that pay offer, and that pay offer will be put into their pay packets over the next 2 years. What we're saying is that you cannot separate us, because we will not allow it in Unison. We are one team Unison. Our members deserve the same opportunities as the health colleagues, and we are in discussions with COSLA and the Scottish Government to make sure that they do not pitch worker against worker, or have their favourite public service workers get more and leave local government as the poor relation. We're not going to accept that. We don't think you should accept it, and we need you to return your ballot paper.
Thanks, Lillian. And we've got Kay here. I work in a care home. I just don't think I can strike and leave vulnerable clients. Kay, I couldn't agree with you more. I work in care myself. Brenda and Marie, we are all local government workers as well. And if you work in care, similar to early years or schools, you're dedicated to the people you work with and work for. And it can feel very difficult to threaten with strike action if you work in those services. However, as we say, strike is the last resort. So we still ask you to vote, and we recommend yes to strike action. That will give us leverage. If it comes to strike action in care, there's things like life and limb covers, similar to the doctors and nurses over the last few years when they have been on strike. Nobody would have thought nurses would go on strike, doctors would go on strike. They have done, but they do it in a safe way to make sure that all the clients are kept safe. I've got Graham here. I'm just sick, fed up having to vote every year for a decent pay rise. When will the Scottish Government and COSLA listen? Brenda, do you want to take that?
Well, I think that's an important question, because ultimately they need to listen. And the reason they need to listen is because all of us have a vote. So we can vote next year in the Scottish Parliament, we can vote in our local elections, we can go down to their constituency office, we can lobby, we can ask those questions. And Suzanne emailed to every single MSP and every single leader of the council just last week with a piece of work which Unison Scotland had carried out, talking specifically around inflation, cuts to services, all the information that we've been talking about tonight, the campaign and briefing document, which was circulated to us within Unison. Suzanne took it to them via email. So that dropped into their inbox. So they're well aware of the facts and figures. They're well aware of the fact, as Lillian said, they're not going to divide us. It's not that health should be getting less and we should be getting more. That position is very clear from, you've heard it from the top of the house, from Lillian, right down to your stewards on the ground. That's not what we're about. And I think one of the important things to remember is when they pay us more, when we get what we deserve, we don't take that money and invest it into stocks and shares or squirrel it away in an offshore account. We spend that in our local communities, in our shops, in our restaurants, and at the cinema, ordinary everyday things. Maybe you buy a wee bit nicer things to eat in the supermarket, that kind of thing. That money goes back into the community. So it's a win-win. You're paying us what we deserve, but you're also helping secure other people's jobs. You know, your wee hot roll shop, your wee news agents, they all rely on workers going to these places, and they're not going to go to these places if their money's tight. Those are the things they're going to cut down. They're not going to go for a cup of coffee. They're not going to go for a hot roll. You know, they're not going to go as often to the cinema or go for a drink or go out for something to eat. So that has an impact. So it's really important that we get fair pay and we get decent public services. But all I can say is the most important thing is that we, Unison and your negotiators, hear your voice. So return your ballot paper. I sound like a broken record. We all sound like a broken record, but it is so important because that's your opportunity to show them how unhappy you are about the pay, and it strengthens our position when we go in to bargain on your behalf with COSLA and the Scottish Government. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks. We got somebody else here. They're flooding in tonight, all the questions and answers. We can't afford not to strike. Working in school, we work so hard for so little, and this rise doesn't cover basics like rent and council tax increases. Absolutely. And we've said it before, the 3%, if you compare it to 10% in council tax, 9% in water, the energy rises, it just doesn't add up. So we really need to stand all together and so get this sorted, and yes, return the ballot paper. We can't say it often enough in the moment. That gives us the leverage to work with COSLA and get more money out of them. Got another one. When will the results of the ballot be published? So the ballot finishes on the 12th. That's the day all the letters have to be returned down to London. I think it's 10 o'clock in the morning or something. They obviously have posties who come early. Up here in Shetland, they only come about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So going it's by Royal Mail, that can take its time to find its way down to London. So the sooner you can get those ballot papers returned, the better it is. And I've got a last one here. Maybe Marie, you want to take that. As the Unison member in a school in Perth and Kinross have been out on strike when called out the last couple of times, what could be the next action if yes twice is returned?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't even know that I've got an answer for that. I mean, it's something that we would need to have a good think about, because the more yeses we've got for the more councils, then the bigger action we can threaten, and then ultimately probably the better. Well, hopefully not have to take action, but these things, there's always a calculation about how and when you take action. There's a lot of different moving parts in that decision making. Local government committee will make that decision, and they'll be sort of led by the feedback coming back from the branches via the branch secretaries. So, you know, if you've got any particular thoughts about what would work in your area, what's going to cause disruption, what's going to get press attention. I know that in Perth and Kinross last year, that worked really, really well because of, you know, who your MSP is, and, you know, that got your strike, your action that you took, you know, a lot of sort of national press stuff. So if you've got ideas like that, feed them into your branch, speak to your branch secretary, and we'll bring all of that sort of intelligence together and work out the next steps in terms of what action we take.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely. So there's the two questions. One is for strike action and the other one is for short of strike action. Sort of strike action can be things like working to rule, like don't do any voluntary overtime, do not use your own car, stuff like that. But as Marie says, it all depends on how many folk we get over the line, and then we can make a final decision. There are strategies we are working on but they vary depending on the outcome of the ballots. So the easiest way is if everybody returns the ballot paper, then we just can take everybody out. So we don't have to think about it. And I think with that, I thank Lillian and everybody else who was here tonight. And I see you all next week for the next town hall meeting. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.